And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. I hope you're doing well. Are you sweltering under this July heat? Summer is a great time for reading, whether you're at the beach, at the pool, or if you're escaping indoors under the air conditioning. It is a wonderful time to pull out the next book on your TBR pile. I'm excited to talk to our guest today. Roseanna M. White is a prolific author, publisher, artist, wife, mother, and so much more. She is one busy lady, and I'm thrilled that we're able to talk with her about her books and her life. She's one of my can't-miss authors, and I'm really looking forward to reading her new book. Before we begin, please take a moment to follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. Now, let's bring in our guest. Well, hello, Roseanna, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so your new book, The Collector of Burned Books, comes out tomorrow. And your hero is a German man forced into uniform, but he has no agreement with the Nazi Party. And so this is the perfect conflict for a story. So tell us about Christian's dilemma.
Yeah, so Christian is kind of representing a group of German citizens who had an expertise that the Nazi Party needed. So they were basically forced into service. They were given a rank in the German army called Sonderführer. And this was basically just a civilian who was put in uniform to perform something that, only they could do. So the engineers, the vets, in this case, librarians or art specialists were given this military rank and sent to do whatever work the Nazi Party needed them to do. Even though they were not military, many of them probably had no desire to have ever been military. And in Christian's case, he is not a Nazi in philosophy, but is pretty much given the choice of do what we tell you to do, or you're going to have to face the consequences.
Right.
So he has to go do what they tell him to do. And he is a librarian and professor at the University of Berlin. So he is sent to Paris to take care of the libraries when they take Paris in 1940, which is to say, remove any objectionable books, shut down any libraries that do not meet Nazi qualifications, take very valuable books and send them back to Germany for German collections. The same sort of thing that we're a little more familiar with them doing to the art world, thanks to things like Monuments Men. They did the same thing to the libraries. And he was officially called the Library Protector, which he does not miss the irony of that he's not protecting them. He's dismantling them. And this goes against his book-loving heart. But again, what's he going to do?
I like and sarcastically there how they, termed it the book protector to, give it a positive spin when really there was not a positive spin on it at all.
Right.
And then what can you tell us about your heroine, Corinne?
She surprised me a little bit. I knew I wanted her to be a professor, another book lover. She lives next door to the Library of Burned Books, which is where Christian sets up his headquarters. I knew I wanted her to be involved in some espionage so that it's got a tie into most of my other works. But I did not expect Corinne to be quite as bold as she ended up being. So as I first started writing her, she just had this attitude that I didn't know she would have, and shared that she was quite a mischievous child, the kind to steal candy from the candy jar growing up, that sort of thing. And so this is just kind of who she still is, which means she backtalks the Nazis, not always a great idea, and isn't afraid of the people she, should be afraid of. And that's just kind of what shapes her and leads her through the story. So she's one of very few female professors in Paris, especially at her age. She's only 30, 31, something like that. So she kind of had to be this bold and daring to make it in a man's world, and isn't afraid to tell people what she thinks and let her opinions be known, even when they could get her in trouble, which they do.
Yes. So I was talking recently with another author about how her heroine was kind of like a reluctant heroine as far as being pulled into the story. But it sounds like Corinne, she's ready to go. She's got that sassy spirit. She's ready to fight.
She does, yeah. She wants her story through the war to be one worth telling, one worth the sacrifices that they're all having to make. She wants to come out of this saying, I did something worthwhile, and my life matters, and my position matters, and I did what I had to do. So as in part as a book lover, she's very aware of the stories that we all tell of our lives, and she wants hers to be something worth telling. So yeah, definitely like bring it on. I'm ready to be a heroine.
Oh, I love that. Now, I might be mistaken, but isn't this your first straight World War II novel with no dual storylines?
It is, yeah. So my first World War II storyline at all was in Yesterday's Tides, and it was only half the book. But I liked it enough that I decided, hey, maybe I'll do something that's straight World War II, which I always swore I would not do. I was like, no, that's way too modern for me. I like the older stuff. I'm never going to write anything newer than the 1920s. Well, famous last words, right?
Yes, that's great. So is the Collector of Burned Books going to be part of a series?
Yes and no. Tyndale has 5 books for me, 3 full-length novels and 2 novellas. They'll all be set in the same world, but they're not in a direct series. So Corinne does make a very brief appearance in my next book, The Spy Keeper of Marseille, but it's basically just to establish that we're in the same world, they're working together, but there's not really any story overlap.
Okay. Now, you were talking about this a minute ago, but you've written in so many different time periods, from biblical and even some contemporary. They're kind of lesser known, but do you personally have a favorite era for setting your stories in?
Oh, I just love history, and like I was that kid sitting in history class taking notes, not on the things that would be on the test, but on the stories I could tell in whatever period we were learning about. And so I have just always loved digging into an era and figuring out what makes it unique and what brings it to life. And the stories of the people in that era just always speak to me. So I can enjoy absolutely any era that I dig into. The more I dig and the more it comes to life, I just fall in love with it. So I did really enjoy spending pretty much a decade in the, early 1900s for my Bethany House books. So they were mostly like 1906, I think was the earliest one, to 1918. And that was so fun because I got to know the era well enough that I didn't have to do all the basic research over and over. I could just dig into specifics of the era for each book. And so I really enjoyed that. That was great fun. But I also just love learning new stuff about new eras. So to get to move again is like, woohoo, yay!
That is great. I've also always loved history, and I would just read my history textbooks for fun. When I was at home, I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to read ahead, I just loved digging into those stories there.
Yep, I'm with you.
Now, you also recently released your first Romantasy, a story called Awakened. So for listeners who might not be familiar with the term Romantasy, what does it mean, and how does Awakened fit under that heading?
Right. So romantasy means fantasy romance or romantic fantasy. It's a story in which the romance is as key as the fantasy elements. So whereas in especially in like decades past, when we think of fantasy, we think of epic fantasy, like The Lord of the Rings or Sanderson's works. And these are not romances. They're a more, kind of general big world building. In romantasy, it's all about the romance, much like in a historical romance or a contemporary romance. This is a romance story set in a fantasy world. And as a romance lover, I love this. So I had been reading a lot of it and just loving it. I was reading a lot that my daughter was reading as she got into her teen years. So we started with a lot of young adult romantasy, and then I started branching out into the more adult stuff. And I love the genre. I love how you have this fresh world, and there's usually, some sort of magic and just that taking you away to another world. And being me, I love the romance. But mainstream romantasy is known for being very spicy. So I really love the idea of bringing that same world building, the same focus on romance to the Christian space. So, clean, closed door, but also having a faith system in there. And there are other romantasies in the Christian space, but it's very small still. And I came up with this idea for Awakened while I was at the beach 2 years ago and decided, a beach set one. Let's pull in some mermaids and maybe a Seahawk, and just had a ton of fun coming up with this world on vacation. And it became my kind of play book that I would just write for fun during the next year. And yeah, so I've now got a whole world built and more books in the series planned, and it has just been pure fun. It's my vacation. So
Yes.
I'll work on these between other projects just as a kind of let my hair down and have fun.
That's great. I think we all need something like that, no matter if we're a writer or, in our regular life. We just need something to do for fun sometimes.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
So, kind of thinking about these different worlds and even all of your books that are in historical settings, how do you create so many vivid characters for your novels?
Well, I mean, they're real people, right? So I laugh when someone, messages or emails to say, oh, these characters became my friends. And I'm like, well, I'm glad because otherwise I'm a lunatic because these are real people to me. So they just, as I write them and get into the first scenes where I'm in their point of view, they just come to life. And I mean, some are more difficult than others, and it takes me a couple chapters to get to know them. But most of the time, it feels more like discovering who they are than inventing who they are, which might sound strange to the non-writers among us. But all the writers, I think, pretty much just nod their head and go, yep, that's how it works. So I love that, my husband actually is always the first to read my books, and the characters become real to him too. And so we'll just be talking about ordinary things, and he'll be like, oh, yeah, well, Barkley would say, or oh, can you just imagine what Mr. V would have to say about that? And I love it because we just, they've become part of our dialogue and part of our vocabulary.
Yes.
And occasionally it leads to funny things where he'll say something about something that I am not thinking about at all. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he'll be like, Polly's Pub. I'm like, oh, right, gotcha. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with it.
That's fantastic. So it's like your family keeps getting bigger with every book that you write, huh?
Exactly. Yep.
So I wanted to ask you, is there any of your characters who is the most like you? So for example, when I was reading your books, I really related to Barclay Pierce in your Shadows over England series because he's such a great protector of others and such a great big brother. And I'm from a large family and I'm the oldest. So, I'm kind of like the one who keeps them all together and stuff like that. So I really related to him. Is there any one of yours that's the most like you?
The most like me is definitely Lady Ella from A Lady Unrivaled. She is pure optimist 100% of the way, very hopeful and filled with joy, and horrible sense of direction. So she's definitely the most like me of any character I've ever written. Not to say that others don't have bits and pieces of me here and there, especially any of them who are writers or creatives. But Ella is definitely my personality. So I was a little nervous putting her out there. I'm like, if people hate her, it'll be like they hate me. But everybody liked her that said so anyway.
Yes.
Maybe people didn't, but they didn't tell me so. So yeah, she's certainly the most like me. But I do have fun with characters like Peter in A Name Unknown, who's from the same Shadows over England series. He's a novelist, so all the annoying ways that he would ignore people when he was writing were also totally me. So I was feeling for my family as I was writing Rosemary's reaction to him of like knocking on the door for 5 minutes going, are you paying any attention in there? Yeah, my children learned early on to just stand at my elbow and just say, mommy, mama, mom, mommy, mama, hey, sandwich, mommy, can I have the sandwich yet, mama?
Now, did you find that it's easier to write characters that are more like you, or like you said, they're so alive in your head that they just all kind of come together once they're alive?
Well, they kind of all do. In some ways, the ones most like me, like Ella, were actually a bit challenging because it's too easy to fall back on, oh, I know her. I don't have to, look deeply. I don't need to discover because I already know her. And so that can lead to problems, which, my editor would be like, I, don't feel like I know her that well. I know Kaiten really well. I need you to go a little deeper into Ella. I'm like, oh, well, here I was just assuming because I know who she is.
Right.
Clearly everyone else does. It's fun when it's just the little bits and pieces. Like Peter is not like me in a lot of ways, but being a writer, it was easy to put those bits in. So it's usually a mix of finding the little pieces of me or the people I know best that I can integrate into personalities, but then also just discovering what makes each character unique and what makes them stand out and what makes them a character worth knowing. And I love doing this because that's what every single person has if you take the time to get to know them, right? So we are all made as beloved of God, and we are all made in the image of our Father, and we are all, princes and princesses in his kingdom. And so that makes us all amazing. We just have to kind of dig sometimes to find out what makes you this unique creature of God. And I love finding that in my stories. And it just kind of challenges me to always be looking for it in the people I meet in real life, too.
Oh, that is a great perspective. So kind of in a similar vein as we're talking about your characters, if you could spend a week with any one of your characters, which one would you choose?
This one was hard. I had to give it some thought, but I think it might be Lord Sheridan from To Treasure and Heiress in The Secrets of the Isles, because he is so hilarious. Like, writing him was just a laugh the whole time. Like, I was just laughing at all the stupid things he said. And so I think just hanging out with him, I mean, he might bore me with lectures on the Druids, but that's okay. He would just say off the cuff things that would just keep me in stitches. And, who couldn't use that for a week?
Right. Yeah, when I thought of that question, I was like, well, who would I pick? And I decided I would probably go with the imposters and all the circus animals. And
they would be fun, too.
They would be. So besides being an author, you and your husband also own a publishing company called Whitefire. Do you enjoy being on the other side of storytelling as well?
I do, yeah. I love bringing other authors' dreams to life and helping them to get their stories out in the world. And I also just love the perspective that you get by sitting on both sides of the table, as I call it. So as somebody who is both an author and an editor or publisher, I know what it feels like to be on both sides of the publishing process. And the things I've learned from being on both sides, I hope means that I'm better at being both, that I am a better author because I know what the publishing company expects of me. I know what I need to do to make my stories worth their investment. And I want to make their lives easier, and I want to do the things that they need me to do. But then also from the other perspective, I know as that person in the publishing company that there are challenges for an author. So how do I help them to focus on making their story better? Yes, but also on getting it out there and on inspiring them to just bring their book to the world, and knowing the personalities that often go along with authors that make them go, but I don't want to do that. I just want to write. So yeah, so it's definitely been just so fulfilling to get to bring stories to the world that just shine Christ's light into the darkness. And that's a real honor and privilege. It's also been mostly, a passion project. We don't make a lot of money on this. It's just something we do because we love to do it. And we want to make the world a little brighter. So definitely a privilege to get to do that.
And what kinds of books do you publish at Whitefire?
Oh my goodness. So we have 5 different imprints to cover all sorts of different things. So our original and main imprint is Whitefire, which publishes both fiction and nonfiction in pretty much all genres. But then we started getting a little more specific. So we launched White Spark, which is a young reader's line. And then we purchased Ashbury Lane, which was another small press that was going out of business. And we turned that into our dedicated romance line. So historical, contemporary, any subdivision, but all romance. We started Chrism Press with some friends of ours that is specifically for Catholic and Orthodox perspectives. And then the most recent one is White Crown, which is a royal imprint. So it's all royal fiction and super fun.
That is fun. And I know with Megan Shawless is one that is under White Crown. And she is up for a lot of awards right now.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm so excited for her. And I'm sure that's exciting for you, too, to have a part in her journey and see not just her, but also maybe you guys getting recognized a little bit.
Yeah, we love it. We have a lot of award winners and definitely a lot of finalists in our numbers. And I was not at all surprised when all of Megan's nominations started pouring in. When I read that book last year, a couple months after it released, it was one of the few books that I've read where I went, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Like, I could not get over how amazing this debut book was. So it quickly became one of my favorites. And so I was like, yes, absolutely. Megan deserves all the awards. Just throw them all at her.
That's great. Now, some of your followers have probably heard you talk about your occasional writing retreats where you get together with a friend and write intensely for days. And what is your favorite part about these retreats?
It's just the kind of the permission to turn off everything else. So in a normal day, a normal week, there are so many different things vying for attention, right? So there's obviously the family and the daily life sort of things, cooking, cleaning, running all the errands, but there's also a lot of other work that's always vying for my attention, not just my own author work like marketing, blogging, social media, all that, but there's all the publishing work, and I own a design company as well, so there's all the design projects that are clamoring for attention. So in order to really have a super productive writing week, I need to turn off all that other stuff. So occasionally I'll do that at home. I've taken to doing it at least once for every project, every book I write. Sometimes I'll do it twice, 2 weeks with some break in between so that I can get the entire book done in 2 active weeks of writing and just ignore everything else. So meals will all be pre-planned. I will often say, okay, I'm not doing any of the normal weekly activities. Someone else can do the running, and I'll just focus on writing. So it's super fun when I get to do it with my best friend. We do that once a year together. One year I'll fly out to her in Kansas. One year she'll fly out to me in Maryland. And then the third year we pick a location and just go somewhere fun. And so we've been quite a few different places at this point, and we've been doing it for, over 10 years, maybe 11, 12 years at this point. And it's just so much fun because we get to hang out. We get our friend time. That it's the only time we see each other face to face. But we just get to focus on the story and lose ourselves in our stories. And we've discovered we can write about 10,000 words a day when we do this. So most of my books are about 100,000 words. So this is most of a book. And the books I write for Guideposts are much shorter. They're about 65,000. So I can usually actually finish one of those books in a week. And it's just amazing fun to get to dive so deep into story and ignore absolutely everything else and just focus on bringing this world to life for, they started out as like 3 or 4 days. We're up to a full week now. And by the end, we are exhausted. We're like, I don't want to write another word for, probably a week.
Yes.
But, then we can go home and pick everything back up and dive back in and do the laundry and all that. But it's just so amazing for those days to just focus on writing and just being writers and ignore everything else.
Yes. Now, your family has gone through quite a lot of health battles in the past few years, including your journey through cancer. And I am rejoicing with you that you are now cancer-free. That is such good news. And
yes.
What gave you the strength as you faced these health challenges?
I mean, it's going to sound a little trite to say God gave me the faith, which of course he did, and the community. So in a lot of ways, our family's health crises started in 2020 when my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And he was life-flighted from our little rural hospital that has no pediatrics to the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital. He was 12 in DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, which you can die from if you don't catch it in time. So he was in ICU for over a day and then in the hospital for 5 days. And when he was in the helicopter, we couldn't go with him in the helicopter. We had to drive separately. We're driving home to pack a bag. And I just remember my husband reaching over and grabbing my hand and saying, this does not get to be the thing that robs us of our dreams. This is the thing God's going to use to shape us into the people we need to be to chase them. And that just has stayed with me through everything we go through, whether it's diabetes or cancer or whatever it may be, just realizing every single struggle is God shaping us into who we need to be part of his plan. It's all part of his plan. And it's meant to craft us into, to put it in my world, right? To craft us into these main characters, capable of living out the stories he wants us to tell. And so I just cling to that whenever we're going through something. And I have found in the cancer journey, especially, the community was unexpected and amazing. I have a group of patrons called my patrons and peers, and these ladies are just such an amazing family that has developed. And every time I had a chemo scheduled or surgery scheduled, they would send me gifts that I started calling encouragement bombs. They would always arrive the week of, one of my chemo infusions or whatever, and just from the different members of the group, but always signed, your P&P ladies via Bonnie or your P&P ladies via Caroline. And they would just send whatever they wanted, whatever they felt like sending. Sometimes it was just a card. Sometimes it was, a goodie box full of candy or sweaters or whatever. And it was just something to brighten my day and remind me that these people all over the country, all over the world are remembering me and praying for me. And that was just such an amazing encouragement. All the notes that I got in the mail, in email, people supporting me through Meal Train, was just this amazing, amazing reminder of how the church really is the body of Christ and how we all support each other in ways that we don't think about until we really need it. And then it's there, and it's just so uplifting and edifying.
Well, how precious to have those come along for your journey, right?
Yeah.
Now, is there a scripture that has been meaningful to you recently?
There are always so many. One of my favorites that I go back to time and time again is from 1 Samuel. And it's talking about how Samuel is growing in the Lord and says, and none of his words fell to the ground. And I just love that. Like, in terms of a prophet, you know that it means that every word he spoke was of God, and it was powerful and it was meaningful. He didn't speak things in vain. But as a writer, this just has such immense meaning to me too, that we want our words to go to heaven, first of all, to aspire to God. We want our words to mean something. We want them to land in the hearts of the people that they are intended for, just like Samuel's words were meant to do. And we never want our words to fall to the ground, useless and void. So this verse, it's not a recent year one, but it's one that I've been clinging to for many, many years now. But it's just always there reminding me of the purpose behind what I feel is my calling, this writing ministry. The purpose is to write words and speak words that never fall to the ground, but always find the place where they're meant to be in the hearts and minds of the people.
That's really good. Now, how can readers connect with you?
You can go to my website at roseannamwhite.com, and there you will find absolutely everything. So you can sign up for my newsletter. I do send out a weekly newsletter with all the relevant stuff that's going on and just a little reflection from me, I call it, let me tell you a story. That's just whatever's going on in my life right now. And my blog posts for the week are in there. You can find a shop where I sell signed copies of all my books, as well as fun bookish merch, and my blog, and all sorts of things. Gosh, everything is on the website, so go there. And you can also find me on all the major social media platforms. My handle is always Roseanna M. White, so easy to find.
Very nice. I look forward to hearing from any readers who go and check that out.
Yep, I love chatting with readers, so never be afraid to send me a message or an email. I call myself an email addict, so I will reply way too fast. Just, yeah.
You do reply very quickly when I message you.
Unless you find me, if we're in different time zones, and I am a early to bed, early to rise girl, so email me at midnight and you're going to be waiting a while for a response. But
Listeners, please do go to roseannamwhite.com to find out all about Roseanna's books. Let me spell her name for you. RoseannaMwhite.com. And please don't forget to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. You can also visit my website at authorerinmifflin.com to sign up for my monthly newsletter. I would be happy to have you along for the ride. Until next time, happy reading.
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.